Hi everyone, welcome back to Julia's story. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I was not invited to the wedding. I do not belong in places with stained glass and fresh flowers and pews that smell like lemon oil and old wood. But Lila works in the church office and she owed me a favor, so she slipped me in through the side door and pointed to the back row. "Sit there," she mouthed, "and do not breathe too loudly." I nodded, clutching my canvas bag to my ribs like a shield, and slid into the last pew where shadows gather and the choir loft hums faintly, even when no one is singing. The air felt expensive. White ribbons curled around the pew ends, soft as whipped cream. 24 candles flickered along the aisle, their flames barely moving, as if even fire was being polite. The organ warmed up in shy notes. Guests poured in like a tide that knew exactly where to go, dresses catching the light, shoes that never met a puddle in their lives. I kept my head down, counting the polished knots in the wood. The church smelled like lilies and distant rain. They say you can tell a lot about two people by the sounds around them. Before the ceremony, her friends laughed in little bursts that sounded like glass bells. His friends talked in smooth, low tones that never tripped. The whispers around me carried words I do not use every day. Legacy, merger, magazine cover. Someone behind me said the bride's veil came from Paris, and I tried to imagine what it feels like to wear something that once knew another language. I told myself I was only here because Lila asked me to drop off a stack of programs she had miscounted. I told myself I would leave once the procession began. But then the organ swelled and the doors at the back opened and a hush raced over the room like a cool wind, and I forgot how to move. The groom entered first, which I guess is how it goes when you can bend the day to your preference. He stood at the front with a priest, flanked by men in identical dark suits and faces that practiced not giving away the ending. His tuxedo fit like a secret. His hair had that precise, careless look that people pay for. The church light found the edge of his jaw and stayed there. He was handsome in the way statues are handsome, all angles and distance. And yet there was a crease between his brows that did not belong to a statue. I had seen him before, but not like this. Nathaniel Carter. That is the name you hear when the news wants to talk about money like it is weather. Buildings carry his initials in tiny brushed metal near their doors. Restaurants whisper his name, and the prices go up on the chalkboard an hour later. I remember once delivering sandwiches to his office tower, standing in a marble lobby, and watching two men with perfect hair sigh when the elevator paused on the wrong floor. People like him, I thought then, live above the weather line. He looked nothing like a weatherproof man now. The crease between his brows deepened. He took a breath and another. The priest murmured to him, and he kept his gaze on some fixed point near the altar, the way people do when they are trying to hold themselves together by looking past everything that could break them. The bridesmaids came down the aisle in a soft procession, petals purring under their shoes. The bride's little cousin scattered white roses with a serious expression, as if she had been trusted with a secret task. The music sweetened and the doors opened once more. When the bride appeared, the room exhaled. She was a line of light, all satin and lace, and a veil that drifted behind her like a domesticated cloud. She moved as if the floor had practiced for weeks to meet her steps. I waited for that to be the end of the story. Groom. Bride. Yes, yes, kiss. I would slip out and return the program basket, and later I would tell Lila the flowers looked like rain caught in midair. I would put the day back on its shelf and take out the next one. It should have gone that way. It did not. The aisle is a long road when you have 1,000 eyes on you. About halfway down, the bride glanced over the rows, smiling like a person who has trained all evening for this exact motion. People adore her, I could tell. Adoration leaves a shine on the air, a pollen. She reached the front and took her place, nerves sparking under the glow in the small way a hand trembles before it finds the other hand it is there for. The priest welcomed everyone, his voice the warm blanket that keeps a ceremony from catching a chill. Nathaniel looked at her veil. The veil fluttered. His jaw moved once like a word had tried to leave and changed its mind. He shifted his weight, and I thought maybe his shoes were too new. Then the priest began the words that always sound older than anyone in the room, and the room leaned toward them the way wheat leans toward wind. I do not know the exact moment his gaze left the script of his day and traveled to the back row. I only know when it landed. On me. A strange thing happens when someone like him looks at someone like me. The mind tries to correct the picture. It tries to place an intermediary. Perhaps he is looking at the stained glass behind me, where a saint holds a lamp with steady hands. Perhaps he is checking the clock in the loft. But there is no clock in the loft, and the lamp is not a lamp that needs checking, and the path of his eyes does not misbehave. It finds me and stops. Heat rose in my neck. I lowered my head and pretended to smooth the program, the way people pretend to read the menu when they already know they will order the cheapest thing. Seconds turned into a length of time I could feel in my teeth. I lifted my eyes, only a little, and the crease in his brow was gone. Something else had taken its place. Recognition, but not in the way people mean when they recognize a face from a magazine. Recognition like hearing a chord and remembering a song you loved before your life got loud. He blinked. The priest asked the question, the first one, the gentle one. He did not answer. Not yet. The pause was slim, but in a room dressed for precision, even a narrow silence cuts. The bride turned her head a fraction. Her friends tightened their smiles. A cough made a small announcement near the front. The organist's fingers hovered as if the music had a mind to rescue the moment with a harmless flourish. Nathaniel inhaled. It was not dramatic. It was the kind of breath a person takes before stepping off a curb into traffic, trusting the timing without trusting it at all. He glanced at the bride, and his face did something delicate and dangerous. It softened. Then it broke, not visibly, not for the cameras waiting outside, but in the small way a line of thought breaks when it meets the truth. We looked at each other again, him from the altar with 1,000 threads tied to his sleeves, me from the last pew with dust on my shoes. The priest repeated the question, gentle again, as if reminding a distracted child to answer the roll call. This time, Nathaniel lifted his chin as if carrying his own name had suddenly gotten heavier. His eyes did not leave mine, and in that held breath, in that tight little space between the question and the answer, I knew the day was about to become a different story entirely. I swear the air shifted in that church. It was like everyone was waiting for the same simple word, that little 3-letter promise every wedding hinges on. But Nathaniel didn't say it. He stood there, tuxedo perfect, hair flawless, but his silence roared louder than the organ. I gripped the program in my lap until the paper bent. My heart pounded like it belonged to someone else. Why was he still looking at me? Why not at her, the woman in white lace who was supposed to be his future? The bride's fingers twitched on her bouquet. I saw her lips move, whispering his name so faintly it was almost a prayer. Nathaniel. Finally, he spoke. Not to her. Not to the priest. His voice carried through the church like a stone skipping water, startling, breaking, undeniable. I can't. The guests gasped. The bride froze. And me, I wanted to disappear, to sink through the wooden pew and land somewhere dark and safe. But Nathaniel wasn't finished. He turned, slow, deliberate, and faced the rows of shocked faces. He scanned them like he was searching for proof of something only he understood. Then, his eyes found me again. The priest stammered, "Mr. Carter, are you saying—" "Yes," Nathaniel interrupted, his jaw set. "I'm saying I can't marry her." Chaos followed. Voices tangled, sharp and rising. The bride's mother stood so fast her chair scraped against the stone floor. The bridesmaids whispered behind trembling hands. Cameras clicked from the back, because of course the press had been invited to witness this fairy tale union.
And me.
I shrank into the pew, praying no one noticed that Nathaniel Carter, millionaire, man of the hour, was staring at a nobody in the shadows. But he noticed. He walked down the aisle. Yes, in the middle of the ceremony, in front of everyone. Each step was measured, like he wasn't rushing, but he wasn't stopping either. The bride called after him, her voice breaking, "Nathaniel, what are you doing?" He didn't answer her. He didn't look back. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to grab my bag and slip out the side door before his gaze landed fully on me again. But my legs wouldn't move. My body was frozen in disbelief. When he reached the back row, he stopped right in front of me. He towered over me, but there was no arrogance in his face anymore. No groom, no businessman, no millionaire. Just a man who looked like he'd been holding his breath for years and had finally exhaled. "You," he said quietly, but the word carried in the hush that fell over the church. "It's you." The entire congregation turned to look. 1,000 stares pinned me in place. Heat rushed to my cheeks. My lips parted, but no sound came out. Nathaniel's eyes softened as though he recognized me, not from magazines, not from some public event, but from a memory buried deep where it mattered. And right there, in that holy place decorated for a wedding that would never happen, he reached out his hand. Not to the bride in white lace. To me. My world tilted, every thread of logic snapping loose. This couldn't be happening. But it was. And somehow, without moving, without speaking, I knew nothing in my life would ever be the same again. I don't remember standing up. 1 second I was clutching the edges of the pew like it was the only thing anchoring me to earth, and the next his hand was wrapped around mine, warm, steady, insistent. The room erupted, gasps, angry whispers, a camera flash that nearly blinded me, but Nathaniel didn't flinch. He just pulled me forward, away from the back row, down the same aisle he was supposed to have walked with his bride. I stumbled, half in shock, half dragged, my pulse hammering in my ears. The bride's sob sliced through the chaos. Her veil shifted as she dropped the bouquet, petals scattering across the floor like broken promises. Guests called out his name, demanding explanations, but Nathaniel kept moving. His grip was firm but not painful, like he knew if he let go, I'd vanish into thin air. The massive church doors swung open, spilling sunlight and noise into the sacred quiet. Outside, the street was buzzing with photographers, reporters, and gawkers who had caught wind of the grand society wedding. Their cheers turned to shouts as Nathaniel barreled past them, pulling me into the sleek black limousine waiting at the curb. The chauffeur's eyes widened, confusion flashing across his face. "Sir, where's?" "Drive," Nathaniel snapped. His voice was sharp, commanding, the voice of a man used to being obeyed. The chauffeur didn't argue. The car jerked forward, leaving behind a trail of stunned guests and a ruined wedding. I pressed my back against the leather seat, breath shallow, mind racing. "What are you doing?" My voice cracked, barely more than a whisper. Nathaniel turned to me, his expression a strange mix of relief and desperation. His tie was still perfectly knotted, his hair immaculate, but his eyes, they looked like a storm had swept through them. "I couldn't do it," he said simply. "I couldn't marry her." I stared at him, words tangling on my tongue. "So you humiliated her in front of everyone? And dragged me into it?" His jaw tightened, but his hand loosened on mine, like he was afraid of scaring me off. "When I looked out there, I saw you. And everything else, it just stopped making sense." I wanted to laugh, to tell him he was insane, that this wasn't how life worked. Millionaires didn't leave brides at the altar for girls like me. Girls who barely scraped by, who wore borrowed shoes and carried second-hand purses. But the sincerity in his voice stole the words from my mouth. For a moment, silence stretched between us, broken only by the hum of the engine and the faint echo of chaos fading behind us. The city blurred outside the tinted windows, streets flashing past, pedestrians turning to watch the luxury car speed by. I forced myself to breathe, to piece together what had just happened. I should have told him to stop the car, to let me out before my name got dragged into his scandal. But when I glanced at him again, his gaze fixed firmly on me, I couldn't move. Somehow, against all logic, I stayed. And deep down, a part of me already knew, I just stepped into a storm I couldn't escape. The limousine sliced through the city like a shadow, and with every passing street, I felt the weight of what had just happened pressing harder on my chest. Reporters were probably already spinning headlines. Millionaire groom flees wedding with mystery girl. My face would be plastered everywhere before the day was over. I sat rigid, clutching my hands in my lap, trying to stop them from trembling. Nathaniel leaned back against the leather seat, finally loosening his tie. He looked exhausted, like he'd just wrestled with his own demons and barely survived.
"Why me?"
I finally asked, my voice raw. "Why would you do that in front of everyone?
"You don't even know me."
His eyes flicked toward me, calm but unreadable.
"I know enough. I know I've been living a lie. And when I saw you,
I remembered what the truth feels like." I let out a shaky laugh, though nothing about this was funny.
"The truth?"
"Nathaniel, I'm nobody. Just some poor girl who got a last-minute seat at the back of your church. You were about to marry someone rich, beautiful, perfect. Why throw that away for me?" He studied me for a moment, like he was debating how much to reveal. Then he leaned forward, his voice low. "Because perfection isn't real. But you're real." His words landed heavier than they should have. My throat tightened. This was madness. Utter madness. Yet some reckless part of me wanted to believe him. The car pulled into the underground garage of a towering glass building, his penthouse, no doubt. The chauffeur glanced nervously in the mirror, but Nathaniel dismissed him with a curt nod. Soon, it was just the two of us, the quiet hum of the garage echoing around us. Nathaniel turned to me, his expression shifting into something sharper, more deliberate. "I know this is insane. I know you didn't ask for this. But I need you to stay with me. Just for a while." My brows knit. "Stay with you? What are you talking about?" He inhaled deeply, the weight of his fortune and reputation pressing down on every word. "By tonight, the media will be tearing me apart. My family, her family, they'll want blood. The board of my company will want explanations. If they think I lost control, I'll lose everything." His gaze locked onto mine, unwavering. "But if they believe I left her for someone I truly love, someone who makes sense of my chaos, they might back off." I blinked, stunned. "You want me to pretend to be that someone?" His lips pressed into a thin line. "Yes. I want you to pretend to be the woman I risked everything for."
I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
He wasn't just asking me to be his rebound. He was asking me to step into a spotlight hotter than the sun, to let the world believe I was the reason he shattered a multimillion-dollar wedding.
"And if I say no?"
I whispered. For the first time, fear cracked his composure.
"Then they'll destroy me.
And maybe they'll destroy you too."
Because they already saw me choose you."
Silence swallowed us. My pulse thundered as I realized the truth. My life had already changed the moment he reached for my hand in that church. Now, the question was whether I had the strength to walk away, or the courage to step into the storm with him. The moment I stepped out of the limousine, I realized Nathaniel hadn't been exaggerating. The storm had already begun. Flashbulbs exploded in my face, blinding me with white sparks. Reporters swarmed the garage entrance like vultures, their voices clashing into a wall of chaos. "Mr. Blackwood, is it true you left Eleanor at the altar? Who's the girl? What's her name? Is this an affair? A scandal?
Was she the reason all along?"
Hands reached out, microphones shoved too close. cameras capturing every flicker of panic on my face. I froze, my chest tightening as if invisible fingers were strangling me. Nathaniel's arm slid around my waist, firm, grounding. He leaned close, his voice cutting through the noise. "Breathe. Just look at me." So I did. His face was calm, steady, almost defiant, as though the crowd didn't exist. For a heartbeat, the chaos dulled. Security rushed forward, forcing a path through the madness. Nathaniel didn't let go of me, guiding me toward the elevator with unshakable confidence, as if he'd rehearsed this escape his whole life. I could barely keep up, my legs trembling, but his grip kept me upright. Inside the elevator, silence finally wrapped around us. My breath came fast, uneven. My reflection in the mirrored walls startled me, eyes wide, hair messy, cheeks flushed with fear. I didn't look like the kind of woman who belonged beside a man like him. I looked like a mistake. Nathaniel, on the other hand, adjusted his cufflinks as if nothing had happened. Only the faint tension in his jaw betrayed him. "You're used to this," I whispered. His eyes softened, but his voice was low. "You never get used to it. You just learn how to keep standing." The elevator chimed, and the doors opened into his penthouse. I'd expected something cold and lifeless, the kind of place rich men used to show off their money. But it wasn't. Warm light spilled across sleek wooden floors, glass walls opening to a breathtaking view of the city skyline. For a moment, the madness outside felt like another world. I stepped inside slowly, still hugging myself. "You shouldn't have dragged me into this." "I didn't drag you," he said quietly, closing the door behind us. "I chose you." His words hit me like a blade wrapped in silk, soft but dangerous. I turned to face him, heart racing. "Why? Out of everyone in that room, why me? You don't even know my name." He looked at me for a long moment, and something raw flickered in his eyes. "Then tell me." The city lights glowed behind him, framing him like a shadowed king demanding the truth. And in that instant, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't sure if I wanted to run from him or step closer. "My name is Anna," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. It felt strange, handing over something so simple yet so personal, especially in a room that didn't feel like mine to stand in. Nathaniel repeated it softly, almost reverently. "Anna." The sound of it on his lips made my chest tighten, though I didn't know why. "It suits you." I gave a shaky laugh, hugging my arms tighter around myself. "You say that like you've known me longer than 5 minutes." His eyes didn't waver. "I feel like I have." The air between us grew heavy, too heavy, so I looked away, pretending to study the shelves lined with leather-bound books and framed art that probably cost more than my entire street back home. Anything to avoid his gaze. He walked toward the bar in the corner, poured himself a glass of something amber, and turned back to me. "You still think I made a mistake, don't you?" I forced myself to meet his eyes. "Didn't you?" He took a slow sip, his jaw tightening. Everyone in that church thought Eleanor was the perfect choice, but I knew I was about to chain myself to a life that wasn't mine. "And then, I saw you." I shook my head, my throat dry. "You don't even know what kind of person I am." His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Then let me find out." I should have run. I should have told him this was insane, that I wanted no part in his rich man games. But before I could answer, his phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. "It's her," he muttered. His fiancée, or ex-fiancée, depending on how you looked at it. The buzzing didn't stop. Over and over, her name flashed across the glass. His shoulders tensed as though the weight of the world was pressing down on him again. And then he did something that made my stomach drop. He declined the call. "Eleanor won't let this go," I whispered, half to myself. "She never does."
Nathaniel replied, his voice grim.
Which is why we need to make this believable.
I froze. Believable. He stepped closer, his gaze locked on mine.
If I'm going to survive this fallout, the world needs to see us together. Not just today, not just tonight, but as though we've been together all along. My heart slammed in my chest.
You want me to lie? To pretend I've been your lover?
His jaw tightened, his voice dropping low. It's not just pretending, Anna. It's protecting. If they believe you're the woman I left everything for, they'll stop digging.
They won't ruin you. They'll let us both breathe.
I couldn't move. I couldn't even think. The city lights shimmered behind him, the buzz of his phone echoing in my ears like a warning. And then he whispered the words that shook me more than all the chaos outside.
Please, be mine. Not forever. Not even real.
But in that moment, the choice no longer felt like his. It felt like mine. And I wasn't sure if saying yes would save me or destroy me. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. His eyes held mine like they were daring me to say no, but also begging me not to. My lips parted, my throat dry, and before I could think better of it, I whispered, "Yes." The words seemed to echo in the penthouse, louder than it should have been. Nathaniel exhaled, his shoulders loosening just slightly, though the storm in his eyes never faded.
"Good," he said softly, almost to himself. "Then we start now." I blinked. "Now?
What do you mean, now?" He picked up his phone, typing quickly, then set it back down. The press won't rest until they see us together again. Tonight. If we hide, they'll think we have something to cover up.
If we show them, they'll eat me alive. I cut in, my voice shaking.
They already hate me. They think I'm some nobody who stole their perfect bride's place. He stepped closer, so close I could feel the warmth radiating from him.
You're not a nobody.
My breath caught. His words wrapped around me like armor, even though I knew they shouldn't. Before I could argue, he pulled open a closet door near the hallway and revealed a line of women's dresses. Expensive ones, glittering under the light. My stomach twisted. They weren't mine, and I didn't want to know who they belonged to. He glanced at me.
Pick one.
I shook my head, backing up. I can't. This isn't me. I don't belong in any of this. He moved slowly, carefully, as if I were a frightened animal he didn't want to scare off. Anna, I don't care what you wear.
I just need you to stand beside me.
Something in his voice broke me. Not the power, not the command, but the crack of vulnerability buried deep inside. So I did it. I chose a dress. Midnight blue, simple compared to the others, but beautiful in a way that felt almost manageable. I slipped into the bathroom to change, and when I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the girl staring back. When I stepped out, Nathaniel froze. His eyes swept over me, not with the arrogance of a man who owned the world, but with the awe of someone seeing something he hadn't expected. "You're perfect," he said quietly. Heat rushed to my cheeks. I looked away. "Don't say that.
Not if you don't mean it."
"I mean it," he replied, voice firm.
"More than you know."
The sound of his phone buzzing again shattered the moment. Eleanor's name lit up the screen, relentless, refusing to fade. Nathaniel silenced it, his jaw hardening. Then he offered me his hand. "Are you ready to face them?" he asked. I stared at his hand, trembling, knowing that once I took it, there would be no turning back. And yet, my fingers moved on their own, sliding into his. The warmth of his palm sealed my choice. And as we walked toward the door, I couldn't help but wonder, was I stepping into a lie, or into the beginning of something terrifyingly real? The elevator ride down felt endless. Nathaniel stood beside me, tall and unshakable, while I fought to keep my breathing steady. My hand was still in his, and though part of me wanted to pull away, another part clung to the steadiness of his grip. When the doors opened to the lobby, a wall of flashes nearly blinded me. Paparazzi, journalists, people shouting Nathaniel's name like wolves circling their prey. I froze. He squeezed my hand tighter. "Stay close to me." His voice was calm, commanding, and it anchored me just enough to take a step forward. He guided me through the chaos, ignoring the barrage of questions thrown at him. "Mr. Gray, why did you leave Eleanor? Who's the girl? Is this a scandal? Was this planned?" I lowered my gaze, wishing I could disappear, but Nathaniel's arm slipped around my waist, pulling me close against him. The world seemed to tilt as cameras flashed brighter. He bent down, whispering in my ear, "Don't look at them. Look at me." So I did. I focused on his sharp jaw, the faint crease between his brows, the steadiness in his expression as if none of this could touch him. For a moment, I could almost believe I was safe. A sleek black car waited outside, the driver already holding the door open. Nathaniel guided me inside, shutting out the noise, though their shouts still echoed in my chest. The silence in the car was deafening. I pressed my palms against my lap, trying to calm my racing heart. "You handled that well," Nathaniel said after a moment. I laughed bitterly. "If shaking like a leaf counts as handling it." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "You didn't run. That's what matters." I turned to him, words spilling before I could stop them. "Why me, Nathaniel? Out of everyone in that church, why the girl in the back row?" He leaned back in his seat, eyes darkening as he studied me. For once, he didn't have an immediate answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, more raw. "Because when I saw you, I felt like I wasn't suffocating anymore." The confession hit me harder than the shouting crowd ever could. I didn't know what to say, so I looked out the window instead, watching the city blur past. We pulled up to a glittering restaurant, the kind of place I'd only ever seen in magazines. Another crowd was already waiting, cameras raised, ready to capture us. Nathaniel straightened his tie, then reached for my hand again. His touch was steady, certain. "Remember," he murmured, his lips so close to my ear that I shivered. "Tonight we're not pretending. Tonight you're mine." The car door opened, the lights blinded me again, and I stepped into the fire at his side, knowing the flames could burn me alive. The restaurant doors swung open, and the buzz of whispers swept across the room like a storm. Every head turned toward us. I could feel the weight of 100 eyes pressing down on me, curious, judgmental, calculating. Nathaniel's hand was firm at the small of my back, guiding me through the sea of stairs as if he owned not only the room, but everyone in it. Maybe he did. A maitre d' rushed forward with a practiced smile, leading us to a private table near the center. Crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier, the air thick with the scent of roses and expensive wine. I wanted to sink into the floor. I didn't belong here. But Nathaniel pulled out my chair, his eyes holding mine. "Sit. Trust me." So I did. The first course arrived almost immediately, delicate dishes I couldn't even name. I barely touched the food, too aware of the people watching, phones raised, whispers rising like smoke. Nathaniel, however, was calm, effortlessly charming, his voice low and confident as he leaned closer to me. "Ignore them," he murmured. "Tonight isn't about them. It's about us." "Us," I whispered back. "There is no us." His jaw tightened. "There could be." My chest tightened, heat rushing to my face. I looked down, but he reached across the table, his hand closing over mine. The contact sent a shiver racing up my arm. And then it happened. A shout from across the room, "Kiss her, Nathaniel!" followed by laughter and more cheers. The entire restaurant seemed to lean in, waiting. I tried to pull my hand back. "We don't have to." But Nathaniel stood, walked to my side, and bent down. His fingers lifted my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze. The world fell away, the noise fading into silence. "This isn't for them," he whispered, so softly only I could hear. "It's for me." And then his lips were on mine. At first I froze, too stunned to move. But his kiss wasn't cold or calculated. It wasn't staged for the cameras. It was real, warm, urgent, almost desperate. My heart pounded against my ribs as I let myself sink into it, my hands clutching the fabric of his suit as if he were the only thing keeping me upright. When he finally pulled back, my breath was shaky, my lips tingling. The room erupted in applause, but I barely heard it. Because I knew, in that moment, the line between pretending and reality had shattered completely. And I wasn't sure which terrified me more, the fact that he had kissed me like that in front of everyone, or the fact that I didn't want him to stop. When the applause finally died down, the rest of dinner passed in a blur. My fork scraped against porcelain, but I barely tasted the food. My mind was spinning too fast, my lips still burning from Nathaniel's kiss. Once the cameras were satisfied and the crowd began to thin, Nathaniel leaned close. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed something raw. "Come with me. There's something you need to know." I didn't argue. Part of me was too shaken, part of me too curious. He guided me out of the restaurant, through a side door this time, sparing us another storm of flashes. A black car waited, and soon we were gliding through the city lights in silence. The car stopped in front of a tall, sleek building I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't a hotel, or at least it didn't look like one. Nathaniel held my hand as we stepped into the lobby, the marble floors gleaming under golden light. The receptionist didn't even ask questions, simply bowed her head and let us through. The elevator ride was quiet, but tension thickened the air. Nathaniel stood tall, but his grip on my hand was tighter than ever, as if he was afraid I'd slip away. Finally, the doors opened into a private suite. The city skyline spread wide beyond the glass walls, glittering like diamonds spilled across black velvet. I turned to him, heart pounding. "You've been pulling me into your world all night," I said softly. "Now tell me why. No games. No pretending." He removed his tie slowly, his gaze never leaving mine. "Because I can't do this anymore. I can't marry for appearances, for deals, for control. When I saw you in that church, sitting alone, looking like you didn't belong, I realized you were the only person in that entire room who wasn't there for me. And that's what I needed." His words sliced through me, both terrifying and intoxicating. I wanted to believe him, but my life had been too full of broken promises to give in easily. "What if this is just another illusion for you?" I whispered. "Another game you'll regret tomorrow?" He stepped closer, his hand lifting to cup my cheek. His touch was gentle, but his eyes were fierce. "Then let tomorrow come. Tonight, this is real. I don't want you because you fit into my world. I want you because you don't." My chest ached with the weight of it. I should have pushed him away. I should have reminded myself of the chaos outside, the cameras, the bride he had left behind. But when his forehead pressed against mine, when his breath mingled with mine, I couldn't fight it anymore. "I don't know how to be what you need," I confessed. He smiled faintly, almost broken. "Then just be what you are." That's all I've ever wanted. And when he kissed me again, this time without an audience, without pressure, without lies, I knew, dangerous as it was, something inside me had already chosen him. The storm outside was still raging, but inside that room, for one fragile moment, it felt like peace. It's strange how one night can flip your entire world upside down. A week ago, I was invisible, just another girl blending into the background of other people's stories. Now, the world knew my face, even if they didn't know my name. The papers called me the girl in the back row, the mystery bride, the scandal no one saw coming. I should have been terrified. And truthfully, part of me was. The gossip, the scrutiny, the cameras following me down every street. But when Nathaniel held my hand, somehow it didn't feel as heavy. He didn't vanish after that night, like I thought he might. If anything, he became even more present. Every morning, he'd call or show up at my door, insisting I eat breakfast. Every evening, he'd find a way to drag me into his whirlwind world, sometimes for charity dinners, sometimes just to walk by the river where no one could follow. But there were still shadows between us. His broken engagement hadn't disappeared, and neither had the whispers of betrayal that followed him.
And me.
I was still learning to believe that someone like him could look at someone like me without regret. One night, as we sat on the balcony of his penthouse, the city spread out beneath us, I asked him the question that had been burning inside me since the altar. Would you do it again? I whispered. Walk away from everything for me? He turned his head, his profile sharp against the city lights, and for a long time he didn't answer. My heart stumbled, terrified of the silence. Finally, he looked at me, his expression steady, his voice low but certain. Every single time. I didn't know what the future held for us. Maybe the world would tear us apart. Maybe we'd make mistakes neither of us could take back. But as his arm wrapped around me and I leaned into him, I realized something simple and terrifying. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sitting in the back row of someone else's story. This time, I was right in the middle of it. And I wasn't ready to let go.